Good evening.
First of all, let me thank Maisha and Omo Moses for having invited me to join the Young People's Project in honoring Bob Moses during the week of his birthday, which I think is in a couple of days, in 4 days. And I'm especially happy because mine is in 6 days, I think. And it's also wonderful that this celebration falls during the period when we normally attempt to evoke the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm especially happy to be able to pay tribute to Bob, who played, as we all know, and as Maisha didn't learn until she was, how old were you? 14, that he played such a pivotal role in the dismantling of legal segregation in the leadership that he gave to the 20th century movement for freedom. Civil rights movement, but I like to call it the freedom movement, which is what people referred to at the time. It was for civil rights, but it was also for more than civil rights. And of course, Bob's work with the Algebra Project continues that struggle for not only for formal rights, civil rights, but also for substantive rights, such as the right to education. And I think that by looking at Bob's life and work, we can better understand how to most effectively pay tribute to the importance of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I think we do this by taking very seriously Bob's own perspective of self-reflection. That is to say, we recognize that the individualism, that heroic individualism with which we usually describe the movement, the freedom movement of the mid-21st century, that is a major impediment to understanding the extraordinary power, the extraordinary collective power of ordinary human beings when they come together and when they learn how to struggle together. And of course, segregation did not fall because of the intervention of a single heroic individual. Apartheid did not fall because of the courage of a single individual. And of course, Nelson Mandela was extremely courageous, but he, more than anyone else, always pointed to the fact that he was one part of a vast movement that embraced huge numbers of ordinary people. Now, I think that Bob Moses, more than anyone else, represents that, oh, there you are, Bob, I was looking for you, okay. That you represent the collective imagination and the collective energy and the collective perseverance that brought down the laws of segregation and made it possible for Black people to exercise the civil rights that should have been accorded to us when slavery was allegedly abolished. It's taken a long time for us to think seriously about slavery and about the consequences of slavery. And I don't think we often consider the fact that in the history of this country, the majority of that history has been a history of slavery. Slavery existed from 1619 until, well, we can say 1865. And that's like 246 years, right? 1865 to 2014 is 149 years. And I hope I get my math right here. But that means that we have spent almost 100 years more in slavery than without slavery. And we are urge to assume that, oh, slavery happened a long, long time ago, and that it has very little to do with what is going on in the enlightened United States of America today. And I know that Bob Moses likes to talk about what he calls the dark side of America. And he says that we would be much better off if we could see and taste the dark side of America. But we're always encouraged to ignore and forget, and this is why we still live with the ghost of slavery. This is why the country as a whole does not see the great racial disparities in incarceration and education as a major travesty. I mean, this is why we cannot understand the logic of structural racism that continues to persist. And so I don't think that we can celebrate the dream. I don't think that we can celebrate Dr. King's birthday and pretend that the struggles that we associate with him should be relegated to the past. It's not about the past. It's about the present and the future. We cannot accept the simplistic narratives of victory that are so often evoked in connection with Dr. King. We cannot afford to believe that we live in a post-racial society. In fact, racism is entrenched in the economic and social and political and educational and correctional structures more than ever before in the history of this country. And so, let me applaud Bob Moses and the Algebra Project for working against this structural racism. And I want to applaud Maisha and Omo and the entire Young People's Project for developing the leaders of our collective struggles, especially for the right to education for the 21st century. Thank you.